Hello there. Good to see you on bright and early on a Tuesday morning, or maybe it's late afternoon. I don't know. The fact is, something slightly different. Again, with these thoughts for the day, I'm kind of scanning uh, stuff that I would normally read sometimes personally, but this basically this thing happened where I quite like astronomy. I'm about as much of a uninformed individual about astronomy as you get. I think the outer limits of my understanding basically come from various children doing solar system reports in primary school. So that's about my level of understanding. But what I did see on the news was this. They had there's a probe, a probe from the Earth that's been sent to go and study Jupiter. And last year, they got these, does the orbits of the planet, and so they got the standard stuff. They got there's a red spot storm, and there's all the stuff, but they got really high quality, high resolution pictures of it. But because it's orbiting it, it's going around parts of Jupiter that very rarely become visible to the human eye, as far as even top-notch astronomers with high-quality telescopes. Um, they found this thing at the south pole of Jupiter, and it just really really weird. But other people far more intelligent than me can explain it better than I can.
Imagine an atmospheric whirlwind the size of Australia with an area of about 7.7 million square kilometers, or about 2.9 million square miles. Now, create 6 variations of different sizes of this giant vortex and place them each around the first one so that you get a perfectly even hexagon. This sounds crazy. However, such an atmospheric phenomenon was discovered by the Juno spacecraft at Jupiter's south pole during a flight at an altitude of 3,500 kilometers, or 2,175 miles, above the clouds of Jupiter. Now, the largest whirlwind has dimensions comparable to the size of the United States, excluding Alaska, and the smallest one is slightly larger than Texas. At first, there were only 6 vortices assembled in the shape of a pentagon. It became a hexagon after one more vortex joined. These cyclones are a completely new natural phenomenon that has never been observed before.
So I suppose the first thing is just to recognize the reality of that's so cool. A pentagon and then a hexagon. That's just like weird. We have, never. There's nothing in our planet like that, and it's just the fact that stuff like that still exists. I don't know about you. The thing that struck me when you go to Fingal's Cave, um, I think it's basalt, but it's the kind of what's it, igneous rock that cools very, very slowly. And when it does so, it forms these basically hexagonal columns. And you've got them in Fingal's Cave. And it's so weird. It looks like it has to have been, sculpted, chiseled by some human force, or maybe alien. You go to Fingal's Cave and there's this really kind of like, how can that possibly be? It looks like something out of a science fiction series. And again, this thing in Jupiter is very kind of like, how can that work? How can that possibly come together? However, that was last year when they spotted it in the Juno probe. This year, they have just worked out why.
Now, a research team working in the lab of Andy Ingersoll, Caltech professor of planetary science, has discovered why Jupiter storms behave so strangely. They did so using math derived from a proof written by Lord Kelvin, a British mathematical physicist and engineer, nearly 150 years ago.
Well, of course they had to come to Lord Kelvin to get an explanation. Trust the answer to be found in a Scottish scientist and engineer. But I think the first thing is just such a cool explanation. But the thing I wanted to focus on was the fact that, well, his name was Sir William Thomson, but and he was many things, but he was just an eminently clever guy. Born in 1824 in Belfast, died in 1907. I mean, there's obviously been lots of engineers and scientists that have kind of come inventors from Scotland. But in the last 200 years, he's probably the preeminent one. Born in Belfast, Scottish parents, was a professor at Glasgow University for 54 years. He was also the president of the Royal Society in Edinburgh, and his contribution to science included developing the Kelvin temperature scale. If you're not involved in science, then that won't mean much. It's just so that you understand when you start dealing with chemicals and metals and all the kind of things that happen with different temperatures, the temperatures that we work with, ice forms at 0 and goes up to 100 degrees, that kind of, it transpires that's way too small a range, and you need a temperature scale that goes far further to allow chemists and physicists to do their work. He invented it, and the fact that you invent the Kelvin scale is just an amazing thing. He formulated the first and second laws, absolute zero, which is the temperature bit, formulating the first and second laws of thermodynamics, inventing a reliable ship's compass, and leading the team that designed and laid the first transatlantic telegraph cable. Lord Kelvin was an elder in the Church of Scotland and chairman of the Christian Evidence Society. He was the preeminent Christian scientist of his day, and I don't have enough time to go into all the stuff that he's done, but this was at the University College in London, which is ironic because it's quite an atheistic place now. But the point is, this is what he said there. This is from the Times, May the 2nd, 1903. Do not be afraid of being free thinkers. If you think strongly enough, you will be forced by science to the belief in God, which is the foundation of all religion. You will find science not antagonistic, but helpful to religion. Back then, there were still an awful lot of people who were saying, the Bible's the Bible, we just hit science with the Bible and the Bible will always win. We now live, obviously, the better part of 120 years on since those comments from Lord Kelvin. But I think he was very perceptive. But what I wanted to do was just finish by almost drawing a parallel between Malcolm Gladwell on yesterday. That whole kind of interpreting the Christian walk, what we have to do is bring ourselves constantly from that focus of the way the world is, and as Malcolm Gladwell said, doing the calculation. How many guns are on that side and how many guns are on this side? In other words, we believe in Jesus, but we don't see his power. And what Malcolm Gladwell said, Goliath looked like he was going to wipe the floor with David. But in reality, his size was an indication of him having an illness that actually limited sight. And his largest strength bore witness to his greatest weakness. Science nowadays looks like it's just going to destroy the Christian faith. Indeed, lots of people would already contend that it has. The difficulty is the new atheism, this, Dawkins and Sam Harris and David Dennett and various folks who have very vociferously put forward atheism and put it down to denigrate Christianity. That the new atheism is already beginning, if not already dissipated, because it's kind of run out of steam. The reality is, it's like Goliath. It looks big and it looks intimidating and it looks as if it's got all the cards to play. But as Gladwell said, we have the weapons of the Spirit. We just have to believe it. And look through telescopes and enjoy astronomy as well. They won't all be like this, but I just thought that was so cool, and that Jupiter thing was amazing. Meantime, go with God, because I know God goes with you.